I stared at the woman in the crisp black suit, then looked past her through the arched doorway into the sunlit conservatory. Inside, I could see my granddaughter, Isabel, twirling in her sunflower yellow party dress, surrounded by what looked like 100 people, strangers in linen and silk. The air smelled of gardenias and money. "I am sorry, madam," the event coordinator repeated, her voice a practiced blend of sympathy and steel. "The guest list is closed at 100, and your name isn't on it." She glanced at her tablet. "Mrs. Thorne was very specific. My daughter, Cassandra, had started using only her married name, Thorne, about 8 months ago, right after her husband, Julian, secured the financing for his second boutique hotel. "I'm Isabel's grandmother," I said. The words tasted like ash. "If you're listening to this, if your breath has ever hitched at a closed door you should have been welcomed through, subscribe to this channel. Stay with me. My story isn't over, and neither is yours." The coordinator's polished composure cracked for a millisecond, a flicker of genuine discomfort. "Oh, let me fetch Mrs. Thorne for you." I stood there in the grand foyer of the Evergreen Botanical Gardens, a place Cassandra and I had loved for decades. We'd come here when she was small, pointing at the orchid varieties, having picnics by the koi pond. We'd planned her wedding here, under the very same glass dome now filled with party guests. I was wearing the emerald green pantsuit I'd bought for this day, the one Cassandra had FaceTimed me about, saying, "Mom, it brings out your eyes. You'll look perfect." That conversation felt like a script from a play I hadn't known I was in. Through the arched frame, I watched the coordinator navigate the crowd, finally stopping at a wrought iron table where Cassandra sat between Julian and his parents. My daughter's smile froze, then melted into something pale and startled. Julian didn't flinch. He just swirled the champagne in his flute, said something to his father, and leaned back. Cassandra stood up, smoothing her ivory sheath dress, the dress I'd contributed $500 toward, part of the party fund she'd said they needed to make Isabel's 7th birthday magical. She slipped through the doorway, and her eyes landed on my chin, my shoulder, anywhere but my face. "Mom, hi. This is unexpected." "Unexpected?" I repeated the word, letting it hang. "I gave you $8,000 for this party, Cassandra. The transfer cleared on April 12th, and I'm not on the list?" Her hands, adorned with the diamond band Julian had added for their last anniversary, fluttered. "It's just Julian's investors, his business network. The venue has a strict fire capacity. We had to make hard choices. And I was the choice?" It wasn't a question. She finally met my gaze, and what I saw there stole the air from my lungs. Not just guilt, but a hardened impatience, a frustration that I was here, complicating things. Julian's parents are covering Isabel's equestrian lessons. They bought the membership to the tennis club. They've pledged the lead donation for the new children's wing at the museum. What were you going to contribute to her future, Mom? A few homemade cookies and a story? The question, so casually brutal, didn't feel like a slap. It felt like a surgery. What was I going to contribute? Just 38 years of single motherhood after her father decided fatherhood was a concept, not a commitment. Just decades of managing the bookstore, keeping it alive so she could have ballet lessons and school trips. Just the quiet, steady deposit of $200 a month in a 529 plan since the day Isabel was born. An account they knew nothing about, now sitting at just over $18,000. Just my life. "I see," I said, my voice a quiet thread. Julian materialized behind her, his hand settling on the small of her back. "Miriam," he said, my name sounding like a mild correction, "this day is about Isabel's joy. We wanted her surrounded by her peers, the children from her school, the families who are part of her daily world. It's about creating a cohesive environment for her." He gave a thin, understanding smile. "I'm sure you can appreciate that." Her peers, her world, the Thorne's world. I looked at this man, with his razor-cut hair and his eyes the color of a frosty lake, and the final puzzle piece clicked into place with a sound I felt in my bones. I was a discordant note, the bookstore owner from the historic but unfashionable downtown district, the woman who lived in a cozy, book-crammed cottage, not a sleek riverfront condo, the one who drove a hybrid covered in environmental bumper stickers. Julian's parents, with their art collection and their silent, soaring house in the hills, they were the backdrop. I was the smudge on the lens. "Mom, please," Cassandra whispered, a frantic edge in her voice as she glanced back at the party. I saw Julian's mother, Beatrice, observing us over the rim of her wineglass, her expression unreadable. "Don't do this here." "I'm not doing anything," I said. I reached into my woven bag, the one Cassandra always said was charmingly bohemian, and pulled out my phone. "I just need to make a call." "Mom, wait." But I was already turning, walking back across the cool terrazzo floor toward the main entrance. Behind me, I heard Julian's murmur, low and assured. "Let her go. She'll calm down. She always does." She always does. Those 3 words chased me out into the bright, mocking sunshine. They echoed with the memory of 1,000 swallowed hurts, the forgotten invitation to their New Year's Eve party, the way my weekly calls had become bi-weekly, then sporadic, filled with rushed excuses, the time I'd overheard Julian refer to my neighborhood as quaint but in need of serious revitalization. I had made myself quiet. I had made myself small. I had made myself convenient. I stood on the gravel pathway, the sounds of the city a distant hum beyond the garden walls. Somewhere inside, my granddaughter was blowing out candles, and I was a banned substance. My hands were steady as I opened my banking app. The transaction to Cassandra Thorne, party, for $8,000, dated April 10, glared back at me. I clicked Report a Problem. Transaction is fraudulent. I selected the option. A box popped up. Please provide details. My thumbs flew. Payment was for a specific service, birthday party admission/participation. Service was explicitly denied to payer at point of access, seeking full reversal. I hit submit. It would trigger an investigation, freeze the funds. It was a small, technical rebellion. Then I scrolled to my contacts and called a number I knew by heart. Evergreen Botanical Gardens, Events Office, how may I direct your call? Mikhail Volkov, please. Tell him it's Miriam Ellis. Mikhail had been the head horticulturist at Evergreen for 40 years. We'd met when Cassandra was a toddler, and I'd bring her to the children's gardening workshops. We'd bonded over a shared love of heirloom roses. When Alina was undergoing chemotherapy, I'd delivered soup and sat with her so he could sleep. We were friends. "Miriam." His warm, gravelly voice was a balm. "You are here for the party, yes? I have the centerpieces you suggested, the sunflowers with the lavender. The little one, she will love them." "Mikhail," I said, and the crack in my voice betrayed me. "I'm not at the party. I was turned away at the door." A beat of silence, then lower. "What do you mean, turned away?" "My name wasn't on the list. Cassandra and Julian, they didn't include me. The $8,000 I gave them was for this." I heard a sharp intake of breath, then the sound of a door closing, muting the background noise. "Miriam, I am looking at the seating chart right now. I wondered, there is no Ellis. There is a Table 12, Family, but it has only Mr. and Mrs. Julian Thorne, Mr. and Mrs. Arthur Thorne, Beatrice Thorne. I thought it was a mistake, an oversight." It wasn't. "Where are you?" "In the parking lot." "Go home," he said, his voice firm. "Go home, make some tea. I will handle this." "Mikhail, you don't have to get involved." "I am already involved. The contract for this event is very clear. Section 4C. Any deliberate misrepresentation of event purpose or inclusion that leads to distress of a principal contributor is grounds for review of services. You are a principal contributor. Your money paid the deposit. This is a misrepresentation." He paused. Also, they are my roses. I can say they are wilting. A faint, real smile touched my lips for the first time in hours. Thank you, my friend. Do not thank me, this is wrong. Go, I will call you later. The drive home was a blur of green and sunlight. My cottage, a tiny Queen Anne tucked between two larger Victorian homes, looked back at me with its familiar, kindly face. The window boxes overflowed with pink geraniums. The little brass bell by the door, a gift from Cassandra when she was 9, tinkled in the breeze. For the first time, I didn't see it as a relic of a simpler, poorer past. I saw it as a fortress of my own making. The silence inside was profound. I didn't turn on music. I just sat at my kitchen table, the one scarred from a lifetime of projects and meals, and watched a ladybug navigate the sugar bowl. The phone erupted at 3:17 p.m. First Cassandra, then Julian, then a number labeled Evergreen Events. I let them ring. I listened to the voicemail Cassandra left. Mom, pick up. There's been a misunderstanding with the venue. They've stopped serving the main course. They're saying there's a payment issue with your check. This is insane. Call me back now. Her voice was panicked, angry, but beneath it I heard the tremor of someone whose carefully constructed stage was collapsing. Julian's message was cold. Miriam, whatever stunt you're pulling, end it. Immediately. You're ruining your granddaughter's birthday. Call the Gardens and fix this. This is not how adults behave. The third call was from the event coordinator. She sounded professionally harried. Miss Ellis, this is Lena from Evergreen. We have a situation regarding the Thorn event. We need to verify the payment source. Could you please call us at your earliest convenience? I deleted them all. At 5:48 p.m., the doorbell chimed. I wasn't going to answer, but curiosity, or perhaps the desire to face the storm head-on, propelled me to the door. Beatrice Thorne stood on my porch, Julian's mother. In the 7 years of their marriage, she had been here once for a strained Christmas coffee. She'd remarked on the charming, if inefficient, layout and the interesting clutter of books. Today she looked out of place in her tailored taupe trousers and silk blouse, but she also looked uneasy. Miriam, she said, may I speak with you? I stepped aside. She entered, her eyes doing a quick, automatic scan of the living room, but the usual critique didn't come. She turned to me, clutching a burgundy leather portfolio. What happened today was unconscionable, she stated. I waited. I did not know you were excluded from the guest list, she continued. When I saw you at the door, I assumed you were late. It wasn't until the service interruption that I asked Cassandra. She told me you'd decided not to come because the crowds would be too much for you. Beatrice's lips pressed into a thin line. I see now that was a lie. I was never told the date, the time, or the venue, I said, my voice calm. Cassandra asked me for financial help to make it special 2 months ago. I transferred the money. That was my involvement. Beatrice's complexion, usually a perfect peaches and cream, went ashen. She slowly sat on the edge of my overstuffed armchair as if it were afraid it would swallow her. Oh, Miriam. Why are you here, Beatrice? She opened the portfolio, not meeting my eyes. Because my son is becoming a man I do not recognize, and your daughter is helping him. She pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a photocopy of an email chain. Arthur, my husband, had Julian's old laptop cleaned for donation. I shouldn't have looked, but I did, and I found these. I printed this one because you need to see it. She handed it to me. It was an exchange between Julian and Cassandra. Julian, did you finalize the guest list with the planner? Need to submit final counts. Cassandra, almost. I have it at 98. Your parents, the key investors, the Ashfords, the tennis club set, Isabel's class list. Julian, and your mother? What about her? Is she coming? It's a tight count. Cassandra, do you think she should? It's a different crowd. She might feel uncomfortable. Julian, she would, and she'd talk about that bookstore to Graham Ashford. He's a partner at Venture West Capital, not the impression we need. Cassandra, you're right. It's kinder not to put her in that position. I'll tell her we're keeping it very small, just immediate family. Julian, good. Frame it as being for her own comfort. She'll buy that. She always does. The email was dated March 28th, 2 weeks after my bank transfer. The second email was from 2 days later. Told Mom we're doing a tiny family tea at home next weekend instead of the big thing. She seemed disappointed but said she understood. Sent the final list to Evergreen. No Ellis. Julian. Perfect. One less thing to worry about. I handed the paper back, my fingers numb. The betrayal wasn't just in the exclusure, it was in the cold, calculated collaboration, the discussion of me as a problem to be managed, an impression to be mitigated. He learned this from Arthur, Beatrice said, her voice hollow. The constant calibration of social value, the view of people as assets or liabilities. I tolerated it. I made excuses for it. I became an accomplice by my silence. I will not be silent about this. She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a crack in her perfect facade, a raw shame beneath. The party dissolved into chaos. The kitchen stopped serving. The staff became politely unhelpful. People began to leave, making thin excuses. Isabel cried because her sunflower cake never appeared. Apparently, it was part of the canceled main service. Julian was furious, blaming the venue, then blaming you. Cassandra just shut down. And she took a sharp breath. I stood up in front of what was left of the party and told my son he was a disgrace. This revelation shocked me more than the emails. He's your son. Why tell me all this? Because you deserve the truth, and because I am enacting a consequence. Arthur and I are suspending the line of credit we extended for Julian's hotel expansion. We are pausing the trust we were setting up for Isabel. We have informed them that our continued financial support is contingent upon them beginning and genuinely participating in family counseling, with you included. I stared at her. You can't force that. No, but I can make the alternative very bleak for them. They have overextended themselves, Miriam. The condo, the cars, the club memberships. It's a house of cards built on our approval. I am removing the foundation. She stood, smoothing her trousers. I am not doing this for you, though you have my deepest apology. I am doing it for my granddaughter. I do not want her to learn that love is transactional, or that family is disposable. I failed my son by letting him learn that. I will not fail her. After she left, the quiet in the cottage deepened. The phone buzzed again. Texts now, rapid and desperate from Cassandra, angry and threatening from Julian. I silenced the device and placed it in a drawer. In that stillness, I saw the last 7 years with terrible clarity, not as a sudden theft, but as a slow, meticulous erosion. My opinions on Isabel's upbringing became sweet but outdated. My gifts of books were met with, "She has so many toys, but we'll make room," and then were never seen again. My stories of Cassandra's childhood were gently shushed as not the narrative Julian wants for our family. I had been edited out of the script, line by line. The next morning, I did something radical. I opened the bookstore on a Sunday. I usually closed Sundays for family time that had long since evaporated. I turned the closed sign to open, made a pot of strong coffee, and breathed in the smell of paper and ink. My first customer was Susan, my oldest friend who owned the knitting shop down the street. She took one look at my face and said, "Okay, spill. I haven't seen that look since you fired the guy who tried to steal your first editions." Over coffee in the poetry nook, I told her everything. The money, the emails, the party, Beatrice's visit. She listened, her face growing stormy. When I finished, she slammed her mug down. "It's about damn time." "What is?" "You seeing it, Miriam. We've all seen it for years. The slow fade. We didn't say anything because it's your daughter. But that man is a social climber, and she's been his ladder, and you were the rung he saw as weak." She reached over, grabbing my hand. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," I said, and it was the truth. But for the first time, the not knowing felt like potential, not panic. The answer began to form 3 days later when Cassandra arrived, unannounced. She looked hollowed out. No jewelry, her hair in a simple ponytail, wearing yoga pants and a sweatshirt. She looked like my Cassandra again, the one before Julian, and the sight was a physical ache. "Can I come in?" she whispered. I led her to the kitchen. She didn't sit, she just leaned against the counter, her arms wrapped around her. "He lied to me," the words burst out. "He said you'd be uncomfortable. He said it was for the best, and I wanted it to be true because it was easier than fighting him, easier than admitting that the life we had, that it required shutting out my own mother." Tears spilled over. "I am so sorry, Mom. I am so, so ashamed." I let the words hang. I didn't offer comfort. The wound was too fresh, too deep. "The counseling? Your parents' ultimatum?" I asked. She nodded, wiping her face with her sleeve. "We start next week, with a therapist Beatrice vetted. She said if we miss one session, if we're not authentically engaged, she pulls everything. The hotel deal will fall apart, we could lose the condo." "And how do you feel about that?" She looked at me, startled by the question. "I'm terrified." "Good," I said quietly. "Maybe terror is the only thing that cracks the shell." She flinched. "I want to fix this, with you, with Isabel. She asks for you every day. She drew a picture of the 3 of us at the bookstore. Julian told her we were too busy to see you. I let him." Fresh sobs shook her. "What have I done?" "You traded me for a fantasy," I said, the words blunt but not cruel, just factual. "And you're realizing the fantasy has a rotten foundation. Can we fix it?" The hope in her voice was a fragile, broken thing. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but we can try. On these conditions." I laid them out, my voice steady. "First, you repay the $8,000, not in a lump sum from Julian's account. You earn it yourself. You find a way." She nodded vigorously. "I will. I've already applied for a few remote consultant jobs in event planning. I used to be good at that." "Second, Isabel comes here, alone with you, every Tuesday after school. No excuses, no scheduling conflicts. This is her time with me, in my world." "Yes, anything." "Third, we attend family counseling, you, me, and Isabel. Julian can have his own sessions with you, but this thread, the one he cut, needs mending separately." "Okay." "And finally," I said, looking straight into her watery eyes, "if you ever make me feel like an option again, if you hide me, minimize me, or treat my love like a charity you're bestowing, I walk away. I am 61 years old. I have spent too many years making myself palatable for people who have no taste for who I really am. That ends now, even with you." She absorbed this, the weight of it settling on her shoulders. Then she whispered, "I understand." She didn't hug me, I didn't offer, but before she left, she paused at the door, her hand on the brass bell. "I missed this sound," she said, so soft I almost didn't hear it. The repayment came in installments of $500, transferred from an account in her name only. The Tuesday visits became sacred. Isabel would burst into the bookstore, a whirlwind of stories about school and horses and her friends. We'd read in the nook, bake banana bread in my tiny kitchen, walk to the park. She called my cottage the cozy house and said she loved it because it smells like stories and cookies. The therapy was brutal. There were sessions where Isabel, confused, asked why Grandma hadn't come to her party. Sessions where Cassandra had to articulate her own complicity, her fear of losing Julian's world. Sessions where I had to voice decades of silent hurt, not just from her, but from a lifetime of believing I had to earn my keep in people's hearts. Julian remained a cold, polite shadow on the periphery. Beatrice kept me updated over occasional lunches that were surprisingly not awkward. "He's resisting," she'd say, "but the financial pressure is the only language he truly understands. He's in the room, that's a start." 6 months into this fragile new reality, I did something else for myself. I used a small portion of my savings, not the college fund for Isabel, which I'd legally restructured into an irrevocable trust with myself as sole trustee, into renovating the bookstore's back room. I turned it into a proper event space, the Ellis Room. I hosted author readings, book clubs, community meetings. It was always full. One Tuesday in late fall, Isabel was helping me stamp due dates in a stack of used books we'd acquired. She looked up, her brow furrowed. "Grandma?"
Yes, my love? For my birthday next month, can I have it here, in the bookstore, with just you and Mom and maybe Grand Beatrice, and Daddy if he's nice? We could have a book party. Everyone could come dressed as their favorite character. Cassandra, who was browsing the new fiction section, froze. She looked at me, her eyes wide with a silent, anxious question. The old me would have said yes immediately, swallowing any residual hurt to keep the peace. The old me would have worried about Julian's reaction, about making things easier. The old me was gone. I looked at my granddaughter's hopeful face, alight with an idea that was so perfectly us. I looked at my daughter, waiting, holding her breath, knowing the weight of this simple request. I knelt down so I was eye level with Isabel. A book character party in the bookstore sounds like the absolute best idea I've ever heard, I said. But sweetheart, I need to know something. If your dad, if he doesn't want to come to a party here in my world, what would you do? She thought for a moment, her little face serious. I'd be sad, but my party is about what makes me happy, and books and you and Mom make me happy. She leaned forward and whispered conspiratorially, Grand Beatrice said Daddy is learning that happy isn't the same as fancy. She said it's a hard lesson. Out of the mouths of babes. I stood up and met Cassandra's gaze. I saw no resistance there, only a tentative hope, and a hardness in her jaw that was new, a determination. We'd love to host Isabel's party here, I said. The party was last weekend. We decorated the Ellis Room with paper flowers from book pages. We had a create-your-own bookmark station and a cake shaped like a giant stack of books. Isabel came as Matilda. Cassandra came as Elizabeth Bennet. I came as Miss Marple. Beatrice arrived, to my astonishment, dressed as Professor McGonagall, a twinkle in her eye. Alina Volkov helped with the costume, she confessed. Julian came. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, wearing a suit, his armor, looking profoundly out of place. But he came. He didn't bring a gift from some exclusive toy store. He brought a first edition of The Secret Garden, which he handed to me, not Isabel. Cassandra said this was your favorite as a girl, he said, his tone stiff but not unkind. I hope it's appropriate. It was an olive branch, thin, brittle, but extended. I took it. Thank you, Julian. It's perfect. He spent most of the party watching, sipping coffee, but he didn't leave. And when Isabel pulled him to the table to help her glue a glittery title on her handmade bookmark, he did it. As the party wound down, the children gone, just the adults sipping wine amidst the happy wreckage, Isabel climbed into my lap, her Matilda wig askew. This was the best birthday ever, Grandma, she sighed, her head against my chest. Because it was real. I held her close, my eyes meeting Cassandra's over her head. My daughter gave me a soft, tear-filled smile. Real. Not a performance for an audience of strangers, not a curated display of wealth and status. Just love and stories, and a chosen family, blood and otherwise, gathered in a room full of books. I am 61 years old. I spent most of my life believing that to be loved, I had to be useful, quiet, and convenient. I thought my value was in what I could provide, and when that wasn't enough, I tried to provide more. But here is the truth I found in the wreckage of a birthday party I wasn't allowed to attend.
You cannot earn a seat at a table where you are fundamentally seen as furniture. You must build your own table, and the most beautiful thing happens when you do. The people who truly love you for who you are will find their way to it. They will pull up a chair and they will stay. And anyone who doesn't, they were never a guest, they were just a critic, and critics don't get to stay for the story. If a closed door changed your life, tell me your story in the comments below. You are not alone. And if you want to hear more stories of quiet strength and second chances, subscribe to the channel. Stay with me. Our tables have plenty of room.